Hi again guys, and welcome to another car review, of course in the world of GT Sport, this time going once again way back to day one for a vehicle that was already included, and technically before day one because this car made its debut as a downloaded Vision GT special in, of course, GT6, and the car in question comes from a brand who have certainly had a very close connection to Gran Turismo for pretty much its entire history. They've had a number of great cars, a number of OP cars as well, the R390 for instance, and that brand is of course Nissan. But on this occasion it is the Nissan Concept 2020 Vision GT, a car which I believe even Nissan themselves have said a number of cues will be taken from for what the R36 GT-R will be. Now I recall reading somewhere, and I may have mentioned this in my, I believe, Potato Cam Days review of this same car in GT6, that Nissan themselves might have said something about this being a 2+2 seater. I'm not certain on that because I don't see that much room in the back to have another two seats, but it would be cool. To me, I would love that actually if they stayed true to that aspect of the Skyline and the GT-R's roots, rather than making it just a pure two-seater supercar, because as cool as that would be, I am, of course, as many of you know, a sucker for a practical performance car. That's why the FF is my dream car after all. But the thing about this one is it's in a pretty unfortunate position, and I would actually categorise this car, and people who like it certainly won't like to hear this, but in a similar place to the Mercedes AMG Vision GT car, because that car was incredible in GT6, in fact way better than the Nissan was, but now the Mercedes feels nowhere near as good, primarily because you cannot upgrade and tune it anywhere near as much, and of course the Group X thing factors in as well. This car, of course, is in Group X as well. It has the same price of 1 million credits, and across the board the spec is pretty much identical to what it was before, even though there are certain things that we're not even told, such as the official weight or engine size. We are, however, told that it has 697 horsepower, which is not bad at all, especially for one of the, if I recall correctly, relatively early Vision GTs to arrive in the game. You had others which had nowhere near that power, like the Beamer and the Mitsubishi, and even others too that we still have, like the Daihatsu, of course. But this one's pretty powerful. It does have supercar levels of power, and the torque is good as well, 506 pound-feet. But for me, the disappointing thing about this car is that it's similar to the Infiniti. In fact, again, if I recall right, it came out at a similar time in the game to the Infiniti Vision GT, which of course I reviewed months back, and that one is my favourite Vision GT, purely based on its looks. It's not my favourite in terms of performance or engineering, obviously, but purely as a piece of art, I think it's a stunning car. I've never liked the look of this one as much, although I get it, you know, you can clearly see the GT-R in it. But the disappointing thing is, one of the prerequisites for a GT-R is that it's an amazingly good performance car. It's dominating on the road, it's dominating on the track, the racing versions are iconic. Across the board, it's brilliant. And even in the concept car world, in Gran Turismo at least, they're still great. The GT-R Black Mask version, the prototype, even the 2001 Geneva version, that was actually probably my favourite GT-R in the previous games because barely anyone used it, it looked crazy, and it was really quick. This one though, it just doesn't feel the same. It's fast, but it's fast in a relative sense, and that's even with the boost that you can actually use in a similar way to the Tomahawk just by assigning a button to it on the controller or on your steering wheel. You can use that, and as you can see in the race, you can do up around, 220-ish miles per hour, which is pretty much the same as GT6. The acceleration is pretty good, off the line it's decent enough. You do of course have all-wheel drive, but the chronic thing about this car really is the snap oversteer. This car, despite having all-wheel drive and being of the GT-R lineage, is extremely twitchy. And it almost ruins it, I'll be honest, because GT-Rs are known, as I've said a number of times, and as many other people have alluded to, maybe sometimes said in no uncertain terms, it's a great car, but sometimes one which can be a little dull. Because of how good it is, it does all the work for you, especially if you count the R34, and even more so the R35. This one is the exact opposite, but not in a good way. There are certain cars that make you work for it, and they're great. Shelby Cobra, for instance, you feel accomplished when you get a great lap out of a Cobra. In a GT-R, you just expect it to do it all for you. This one doesn't, and in fact the handling is so temperamental that it can sometimes really hinder what was a great lap up until that point. And again, if my memory serves me correctly, you cannot even tune this car as much as you could in the previous game. Now, I don't recall you being able to do that much to it anyway, but I'm pretty sure it was a little bit more than we can do now. Again, I could be wrong, but either way, I never used it really at all in the last game, apart from just test driving it. I certainly never raced with it, even with the PP point system in place. Now, I don't use this one either. I barely use the Infinity, but I do at least like looking at it. So for me, this one has next to no use at all. And beyond doing this race for the review, of course, I never use this thing. And I barely see anyone else using it either. Even GTR fans, I think, can't get fully behind this car because it just doesn't even feel like a GTR. I like the spirit that it has, I like the forward-thinking design, I like that it's much more of a pure supercar than any other GTR has been, because, of course, through the decades, the GTR has evolved, it's changed. It was originally a modified version of an existing car, almost like a hot hatch kind of level machine by today's standards. It then became more of a JDM icon, a sports coupe in a general sense, full-on sports car you could say, ultimately a super sports car when it comes to the GTR, and this one could have been not just a supercar but a borderline hypercar, even if they'd have made it like some kind of hybrid. Could have certainly taken on stuff like the McLaren, Jaguar. Didn't produce the Jag, but you know what I mean. That kind of level would be possible, by all means. The GTR is already brilliant, and it's not even aiming for those kind of cars, so this one definitely could have been. For me, it just feels like this kind of watered down version of what the car could be, which is strangely challenging through corners, even on good tyres, and the handling issues coupled with the lack of modifications and upgrades and tuning that you can do, or can't do in this case, just compounds the fact that, in my opinion, this is a straight up bad Vision GT car. It's not bad in terms of design, it's not bad in terms of straight line performance, but for any kind of use in racing, it's just not that good. It certainly doesn't live up to the GTR name, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't live up to the on-paper spec. 700 horsepower turning into 220 miles an hour is fine at best. In GT6 it was fine, it was no quicker, and there were plenty of other cars with around that same amount of power that were much older and also much quicker, even without tuning. So for performance, it's uninspiring. Handling is strangely challenging, which, you know, try it out if you want to have a challenge, but beyond that, I think most importantly, the car isn't really worth the challenge. This isn't like a Shelby Cobra where it's deceptively great. It's just challenging for the sake of it almost. So ultimately, I find it strange, because at the end of the day, Polyphony and the manufacturers involved, you could argue definitely Polyphony, perhaps the manufacturers to a degree, they have a direct say in what these cars are going to feel like. And that's the strangest thing of all to me, because why would Polyphony and Nissan ever be happy with this? Why would they think that this is good? Because it simply isn't. It's not that fast in a straight line, it's fine. The handling is not good at all for what it's supposed to be, doesn't live up to the name, and it certainly doesn't make me excited for an R36. So it's kind of a weird car, it's almost in a Vision GT limbo. Now, I'm sure there are people who do like it, and I'm not going to put it in the boat series because it's not like it's got no use whatsoever. It can be used in racing, albeit one make, for instance, here, and it looks like nothing else. So, at least from that point of view, you could buy it and have some cool points for it if you like the car. Beyond that, though, this really is one of those Vision GTs that I would say you categorically don't need to buy this one. So if you do specifically like the look of the car, or want to give yourself a bit of a challenge, or just try it out, then of course part with the million credits, or win it in a career mode spin, and try it out. Beyond that, for the vast majority of us, it's definitely not an essential purchase. You won't really use it as much as many of the other Vision GTs, and that's it overall for my thoughts. So maybe a controversial one, I know a lot of people do want to like this car. For me though, I just can't bring myself to saying that many good things about it because it simply isn't that good. So overall, that's it for this review. Of course I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.